Hi everybody, and welcome along to another edition of the Life Force Patterning Integral Health radio shows here with me, Ben Calder. Today we're broadcasting from Centre for Integral Health in Shrewsbury here, and today I have with me, I'm lucky enough as my guest to have Amanda Bedding, who is an acupuncturist and Chinese herbal medicine specialist, member of the British Acupuncture Council, who are a leading body for traditional Chinese medicine practitioners. She's been in practice since 2003, running a very successful clinic in Bristol, as well as lecturing at some of the leading acupuncture colleges in the UK. And we're really lucky that Amanda is now relocated into Shropshire, where she's in the process of building clinics here in Shrewsbury at the Centre for Integral Health and also at Church Stretton. So hi Amanda, thank you for joining me this morning.
Hi Ben, nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you. Some of you who kind of know me and listen to my work know that I've got a big thing for Chinese medicine anyway. Being a kinesiologist, my background is in 5-element work within Chinese theories as well, and I'm a Qigong practitioner, so I love the Chinese stuff. But what got you there? What was it about Chinese medicine and acupuncture that kind of drew you in?
For me?
Yeah.
I think I'm like many professionals, and not knowing what is good health and not knowing how I was spending my energy. So working in a very stressful job, deadlines, lots of travel, pressure both at home and at work. And one of the things that really got me into Chinese medicine was that I had a bereavement. Quite early on in my life, around about 18, I lost a boyfriend to a car crash. And I didn't do anything about it. I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to deal with those emotions. There was no framework whatsoever in my family or around me. It was just, we had the funeral and you just get on with it. And of course that emotion just got absolutely buried. And on top of that, I began self-medicating. My behaviour was a bit wild. And as a result of it, I started to damage myself. And it wasn't until sort of 10 years later that a friend of mine was training as an acupuncturist. And at the time I was looking to take antidepressants because this kind of depression had really gripped hold of me. And she said, come along, come and see what it does for you. And I was absolutely amazed at how I felt when I left there. I felt like I had finally got back in touch with me, as though I don't know, that my soul or spirit had somehow just been tenuously holding on by a thread, and now I was back in my body. And I was literally blown away by this. And I remember going home and just saying, I need to know how this works. And of course, acupuncture isn't a linear medicine, it's holistic or integral. So the more I read about it, the more I didn't know. And I got to a point where I just thought, I can really see if I've benefited from this, that I know so many of my friends who are probably in similar situations who would benefit from this. So I put a plan together, I rented my house, I jacked my job in, I sold all my possessions, and I got to acupuncture college. And the first week of sitting there, I knew I'd come home. I knew I was absolutely in the right place.
Wow.
And I still feel that. I feel so lucky to be doing this amazing job, and for it to have, I know it sounds quite corny, but literally saved my life. Who knows where I'd have been if I'd continued with that way of behaving. Yeah. So it's really changed things for me, and I know most students who come to the college that I lecture at have had a profound experience, emotionally or spiritually, from acupuncture.
Wow. And that, to me as well, listening to your story of how you got there, that seems like actually not only a really common theme within practitioners, that in some way life has had significant challenges, that we've been at breaking points, that we've found something that's brought us back to who we are and what kind of gives us meaning and purpose in life. But I hear this story so much within my clients as well, and people who are struggling, people who have got stuff that they haven't dealt with, and they just need a little bit of support and help. And the medicine that comes in at a holistic, integral level is able to do far more than just treat a symptom or to deal with a pain or the thing that often gets the person to the gate, as it were. There's a great deal of depth beyond that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I've really realised, and one of the things that I try to encourage a lot of my clients to do, is that the thought of the pain of going through this change or transformation is absolutely not painful. It's freeing and it's transformative, and there is no pain, and we do change, but in such a positive way. Once I touched my grief, crikey, I was floored for a couple of weeks with crying and touching it again. But now I just think of this ex-boyfriend and just kind of go, crikey, what an amazing man to have met, rather than this kind of continual lump in my throat or this continual what if. That's gone. And I know that transforming those stuck emotions is just so important for moving forward.
And also such a departure from the concept that we're given by the conventional viewpoint out there about not only emotions but specifically about grief. That these are things, we don't talk about death in a healthy, open way. We don't look at these things in a way that's going to encourage them to process. And the harm to our health for that is significant, would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, the emotions like joy or anger or frustration or worry, they're every day. But grief, it kind of holds its own special place, really. We generally don't know grief, certainly in the UK. There are loads of people who are struggling on a daily basis in awful situations, who are faced with terrible situations, and yet we might have a pet die or a family member die, but we need to know how to deal with grief, because it's not just about the loss of somebody, it's about also how we grieve the loss of parts of ourselves that we no longer need anymore. It's this continual transformation. And through that, and through Chinese medicine as well, the most beautiful part about going through grief or touching grief is that there is this golden part of us that we just don't know is there. Well, we do on one level, but we're afraid to go through the pain of finding it. And going through the pain of finding this gold within us, this absolute, that grief and death and loss is actually part of an everyday thing that we have to deal with. I mean, just look at how the Indian culture deals with death. It's every day, and it's as normal as joy. And I really hope that we will get to a place where we integrate grief from the outside, bring it inside and really welcome it.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm actually such a big fan of Chinese medicine as a whole as well. It is just that it's much more pragmatic about everything. There is no hiding from the dirt of life, essentially, the dark bits. It's all part of it, and it's all taken as a whole straight away. And again, through Chinese medicine, through Qigong, what I've found is that you can, without really having to think about it in a way that is threatening, this stuff will just come out, because again, through the diagnosis that you use within traditional medicine, through Qigong practice, actually this stuff is there and it will be treated. And so in a way I find it less scary to work with it in Chinese medicine, because it's going to come up anyway.
Totally. And it does nourish our destiny. I mean, it absolutely does. It puts us back in line with our absolute self and how we deal with life, and it's phenomenal medicine. It really is. And the choice I had was antidepressants, and which dulls your emotions.
Sure.
There's very little chance of me ever being able to really touch that grief with antidepressants. So there are people who need to be on them, obviously, but I do think for people who don't want to be on antidepressants but are struggling to find some way of dealing with this, I think Qigong and acupuncture work absolutely brilliantly together, and really should be looked at.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what the differences are in traditional Chinese medicine that you practice and, say, acupuncture that a Western professional such as a doctor or a physiotherapist might use as well. Because I know it's become very popular in the last couple of years for doctors to be able to offer acupuncture, GPs, I should qualify on that. So tell me a little bit about what the variance is in all of that.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, to be honest. On one hand, I'm really pleased to see acupuncture being integrated into the Western profession. However, I'd be even more pleased if they're actually using the diagnostic skills behind it. So if they were actually using a diagnosis of the whole body rather than just simply the pain. What we're seeing in the acupuncture community is that that Western professionals are curious about acupuncture, want to use it, have used it in pain clinics really successfully, but it's being used linearly. So there are some acupuncture points that have a definite function. So, for example, one acupuncture point on the hand, which is called large intestine 4, is brilliant for clearing headaches. However, this is where the integral diagnostic is important, because if you have a patient who has, for example, loose bowels and a headache, perhaps the Western profession would use large intestine 4 without actually thinking of the repercussions on how that would also work on their bowels, because it does two things. So it's really being sophisticated and clever in using acupuncture points. And I think this I've got a headache, therefore I use large intestine 4 is the linear Western approach.
Yeah.
So I really welcome any Western practitioner to use acupuncture, but perhaps to do the diagnostic skills behind, because it will really consolidate and solidify the diagnosis. So in terms of the actual style that's being used, the Western practitioners tend to use something called trigger point acupuncture. In Chinese medicine, we call it shi. So it's like the Chinese used to go, shi, which translates as the painful good or the good hurt. And it's running your fingers around the area that's painful and finding the points that are sore. So again, it's not using the meridians as any intelligent source. Using the acupuncture points completely distally so that you clear the channel, rather like clearing the Bakerloo line in London Underground. You start with the one station and it clears all the trains through the station. But it tends to be learnt in a weekend, so Western practitioners can go and learn this dry needling technique in a weekend. They wouldn't let me go and do a weekend in brain surgery.
Sure. and actually that's a beautiful comparison about the real complexity underneath Chinese medicine, isn't it? It's not, it really, and again, I've been looking at this now for 19 years, and all I know is, like you, I know less. The complexity and the interaction and the flow between different aspects, different layers, different levels, different parts of the system is massively complex.
It is. It's just not linear.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, it can't help but treat the whole person. And a lot of my students, I'll see them in the second year, and they're so frustrated because they've now got another piece of information that adds on to another bit here, but they haven't got the full picture.
Sure.
But there is an aha moment where they get it. And a lot of my clients say to me, "How can I learn about Chinese medicine?" And there is really only one book by Ted Kapchuk, which is the web that has no weaver. Every other acupuncture book on acupuncture is a textbook, which is why it's so frustrating to try and understand how it works. But I really, even if you don't want to be an acupuncturist, as a lens and a filter for seeing the world, Chinese medicine is just absolutely beautiful. It puts us back in touch with nature. Learning about acupuncture, I just watched how plants moved in the wind, and kind of tried to work out how the Chinese even got to understand how a plant could move in the wind, or what it did in the sun, and how they knew how that would help us on a medicinal basis. It's just profound.
Yeah, sure. And that depth of knowledge is something that is really, really interesting to pay attention to. And again, I think that we've become so devoid from nature in a lot of our health and the way we're looking at it, that we're treating ourselves like cars, like mechanics, and again that linear process, but actually we are these biological systems that cannot be separated from the environment that we're in and the culture that we're in and the relationships and all the rest of it. And to really look at health, we've got to have a system that overtly declares that it will address all of this.
Yes, absolutely. And part of the diagnostic skills is understanding how the environment behaves with us, how we interact with it. For example, if you go walking, and you have a diagnosis, for example, of being damp, and how this would manifest would be with swollen ankles or swollen knees. And it would just be like something like, do you wear Wellington boots when you go walking? Or, oh no, I wear sandals.
Sure.
It's like the nature gets into us, the wind and the damp gets into us. But it is understanding that we are part of nature, and everything about us is nature. It's beautiful. Yeah.
And one of the things I find really interesting is listening to people when they're talking about the way that nature comes into us. People that choose things like a raw food diet in winter, so cold, damp food in winter. And I see posts of Qigong practitioners who are practicing in wind and rain and snow outside. And there's that part of me that is just like, okay, it's beautiful, but what's that real holistic understanding of all of those factors and how they contribute into the body?
Absolutely. I mean, we are just coming out of winter now, and I was horrified a week ago to see my mum sucking into a plate of salad. I'm just saying, crikey, we need to be eating stews, with good quality meat, and if not, good quality protein, with beans, something that's easily digestible, something that doesn't put too much of a stress on our system. And I do a lot of work with fertility, and just seeing what nature is doing gives me an indication of how fertile somebody is. And over the Christmas period and winter period, there were very few people who fell pregnant. It's possible, of course, because we get pregnant all through the year, but people who are struggling to conceive, winter is probably the hardest time. Come the first kind of shoots of spring, they're falling like whatever. There's just like text after text saying, I'm pregnant, where the spring energy has just come through, and because they've been resting and waiting for this spring energy, it really pulls them with it. And I kind of love the analogy of kind of grabbing the dragon's tail through spring and just going with it. And it is like the seven bore kind of waterboarding. It is just kind of waiting for that surge. And if you've spent the winter resting and eating well and trying to live, going to bed early and getting up early, Qigong practice, meditation and good nutrition, going into the spring is just beautiful. I think the winter is just a lovely time, but having Christmas smack bang in the middle of the most deepest, darkest time of the year, when we are nearly at hibernation, and then ray party, it goes against the law of nature. And I hear people complaining about it, but because they haven't got the sense of what we should be doing with nature, they know it's wrong, or it feels wrong, but don't quite know how to avoid it.
And of course the retail drive, gets into everybody's systems, grabs their adrenals and drags them along. It's almost like you don't get that choice to settle. You have to really reject it to be able to be quiet.
And the look of horror on people's faces when I just say, just avoid Christmas. Don't do it. It's just like, what? And it's really possible to do it far more gently.
Definitely.
It's really possible. And I think for people who are listening to this, if you're interested in knowing how to do it more gently next year, come and talk to us, because we can really guide you to a very peaceful, calm and restful Christmas.
Definitely. And for my own part, I can really say that I did that this Christmas, and I did no Christmas things whatsoever, and actually stepped way out of the space and just allowed myself to rest and take the time, and came back in through the new year actually with a lot more stable energy. And
absolutely, really absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, how do you feel that acupuncture is actually working?
Well, it's really interesting. I came to acupuncture really with both feet in an alternative lifestyle. I rejected Western medicine on all levels, and would not go near it. Wouldn't even recommend integrating it with my practice. But through having a medical issue myself and realising that that people do need the help of the Western profession. They're really curious about it. They want to know how acupuncture works. I kind of see acupuncture as almost an amazing energetic medicine, and it reminds me of people knowing that there was the speed of sound or the speed of light. Realising that happened, but having no tools to measure it. And I really believe that that's where we are with acupuncture. We know it works. We know it has amazing results. How it works, we just don't have the tools to measure it yet. The Western profession have gone so far as to kind of try and watch how the brain lights up if they use particular acupuncture points. And of course there is that brilliant clip on YouTube of watching someone having major surgery just with acupuncture as anaesthesia. So there's, that it has clearly a neurophysiological effect, but on what level we still just don't know. Certainly it regulates hormones, and for women's menstrual cycles, for women in general, managing our hormones, it just does it naturally and automatically. So getting menstrual cycles back in routine, getting people ovulating again, helping women go into labour, it really affects us on a massive level. So from a Chinese perspective, they've got it sussed. We have qi, we have blood, we have special fluids, and acupuncture moves them and makes sure that all the organs which are responsible for these fluids are working the best they can. And for example, the lung energy is responsible for the emotion of grief. So, anything that I see in somebody who is grieving, I will automatically look to the lungs. And every time we breathe in, we're breathing in energy from the outside into our lungs, and that moves straight down to the large intestine. So we breathe in when we're born and we breathe out when we die. It's and hence why I think that the lung is associated with the emotion of grief. But it's basically about our chi moving. Yeah.
So just for anybody that hasn't come across the concept of chi before, how would you define that?
Oh, it's really hard. It's really tough. I think again because of the Chinese language, which encapsulates one word for a whole concept, whereas our language just doesn't. There really is a mismatch in translation, and a lot of people use chi as body force or spirit, and there just isn't a word that encapsulates it. In actual fact, the Chinese diagram probably encapsulates it far more visually than the word, which is that we just have this life force. And I don't know, my dog died on Boxing Day, which was pretty rubbish, but I was there when he died, and watching him die was just incredible because it happened so quickly, and just watching this body afterwards was just and his spirit in between time, it was just incredible. It was such a privilege to be there. But I can't explain that, but that's our chi. It's everything about us. It's everything around us.
And I think when you ask most people about whether or not they think there's something more to themselves than kind of meat, essentially, there's always that recognition that there is another aspect that isn't just mind, that is more than the nuts and bolts of joints and ligaments and organs, that there's something else in there, and for me that essence of life, whatever it is kind of where chi is within the system, and that without it we are just a cadaver, and that's totally. That bit that animates us. Totally.
Consciousness, isn't it? And even now the Western profession are realising that doesn't happen in the brain.
Yes.
It is just everything about us, our life force, and I use those words lightly, but that is probably the best description of us. It's what makes us, isn't it?
So tell me a little bit about what would be taking place in a typical acupuncture session as well.
So there's so much going on in a typical acupuncture session, so it's not just about what somebody is saying. I am surreptitiously smelling, I am looking at the colour of their faces and looking for all sorts of the glint in their eye, the sparkle of the eye, just what their skin is doing, just everything about them, colour, sound, odour, emotion, and how their voice sounds as well. So I'm looking at their tongue, so people will stick their tongue out to me, and that will give me an indication of what's going on internally. One of the most beautiful ways of diagnosing is so simple, which is by temperature, and that people can run too hot and can run too cold. And this was something that the 16th century doctors realised as well. And I think it's something that GPs still are in touch with but don't use very often, but it's an amazing way to tell if somebody's out kilter. I touch someone's pulse, so on each side of the wrist there are 3 major pulse positions which give me access to 2 organs within the body. The rate of the pulse, the quality of the pulse, how the pulse feels, gives me information that, coupled with the tongue and everything else that I'm looking at, I don't need someone to tell me really how unwell they are, because I can see it, touch it, feel it, smell it, see it. And the Chinese doctors who are working in multi-bed clinics over in China will just get someone to put their pulse out of a curtain, and that's all they'll do, is they'll feel their pulse and they'll do the treatment based on that. Yeah. I'm not at that level by any stretch, working towards it, but we're never taught how to touch things.
Yeah.
And this pulse that we're taught how to work with, it's just incredible. For me, I found a way of communicating with somebody that suits me. It's intuitive. It's touching the chi, touching the life force again. So it's almost like sinking my fingers into someone's spirit and getting the feedback. And I have felt people's pulses and got such strong feedback from them. And I do believe that we carry everything in our energetic field. And as an intuitive practitioner, we touch that and feel it. And that's what enables somebody who just puts in needles to someone who actually works with someone on an energetic basis. There's a real difference. Anyone can put a needle in someone. Sure. It's how we deal with that person on an unconscious level. So I get a lot of feedback from the pulse. But I will ask lots of questions about your sleep, your digestion, your elimination, your special senses. If you were a female, what your menstrual cycle is like. And there are kind of 10 questions that encapsulate someone's health, and depending on the answers will guide me to a diagnosis of why you have this particular illness or a disease symptom, or what you're struggling with, basically. And from that, and there's always a lovely aha moment of, great, this is what this person is. I then choose acupuncture points which will complement what I'm trying to do on that day. So for women who are trying to get pregnant, I will stimulate their energy around ovulation and also heat them up, particularly in the second part of their menstrual cycle. For people who've got pain or fever, I will take heat away. And for people who are deficient, I will increase their energy. So by using particular acupuncture points that do that. And then complement that with specific supplements or Chinese herbs or nutrition that will continue the healing while they're out of the treatment room.
And that actual complement side of it is, in my mind, is absolutely key to really get the most out of what it is, A, that you've uncovered from the diagnostic work, and B, for me it's the deep buy-in by the client to commit to creating a change.
Yes.
And again is part of what really defines the difference between somebody who's just needling and somebody who is actually looking at you from a holistic and integral perspective.
Why wouldn't I want someone to take control of their health, And I think it's absolutely anyone's duty who's in the position like ourselves to educate somebody so that they start to realise just what their individual constitution is. And again, this is the most brilliant bit about Chinese medicine, is that the Chinese knew from an early age what their constitution was. Their restaurants are based on, ordering food that clears phlegm or clears damp or tonifies their blood. We're starting to see a bit of that over here, but it tends to be for Western problems like diabetes or anemia or something. So we're getting kind of restaurants which are catering for illnesses, which is brilliant. However, to be told that your constitution for your life is that you are blood deficient or you have a damp issue, and you're told how to manage it, you've got your recipe for longevity. You've got your recipe for, I avoid sugar things, I avoid alcohol, I avoid all of these things that will create this damp, which muzzes my head, gives me brain fog, causes me to be tired and grumpy. Why would I want to continue doing those things if I had those symptoms? So unfortunately, this is where the Western profession, their advice is broad stroke. Everybody has the same symptoms, but we don't, which is why some medicines work better for people, why some supplements work better for people. You mentioned earlier about a raw food diet in winter, which is like everybody should avoid that. There's just, unless you're in a hot, sunny clime, and it's being able to be educated so that you know what best to do for yourself, and give yourself control of your health.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing that in my experience, that so few people have a real recognition that part of the reason why the symptoms are there, part of the reason why the issues that they come with are there, is because they caused them through the choices that they made unconsciously within diet and lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing when people start to get to that point. So just as a golden question, because it's I know that it's there for anybody that hasn't tried acupuncture. It's right there. Does it hurt?
No. There is a sensation which is the arshi sensation. It's the good hurt. It's it's not like having an injection needle, which is huge. The end of a needle that takes out blood or puts in medicine is huge. The acupuncture needle is the width of a hair. It's in so quickly, but you will get the chi sensation, which is and then it's gone. And you'll know it's working then because there'll be a tingle. Sometimes there's redness around the spot, but it doesn't hurt. Not the fear of it. It's the fear is worse than the reality.
Sure, and I'm going to really concur with that as well. And although my very first experience of acupuncture, I have to say, wasn't very good. I don't think the practitioner who I saw was particularly adept at that point, and I didn't really feel anything, and it was just uncomfortable. It wasn't what I considered a useful one. But again, the more that my Qigong training went on, the more that when a needle went in, I could actually feel the whole pathway being activated. So I could feel the whole meridian system, and I could feel the change in the body. And the actual sight of the needle was, in a way, immaterial. It didn't matter because there was so much going on through the rest of my body with it.
It's amazing. For people who haven't had acupuncture before, they will say, I felt a sensation up here, and completely away from where the needle was. And actually they're describing the root or the meridian. We feel it, but we haven't got the education to know it. So I love that. I kind of go, right, here's a diagram of just what happened, and this is the organs that are being affected. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I love it. So what kind of people, you mentioned a little bit about fertility, but what kind of health issues, what kind of things do you really like working with? What's your real, I love to get my teeth into that kind of stuff? What kind of fires you up in the day, excited to see these people?
Oh gosh, anybody who says they can't get over something.
Sure.
They can't get well, they can't get their stomach sorted, they can't get their migraines sorted. Anyone where they've tried, so many things like going to the doctor and not had any joy. And this woman came to me just 5 weeks ago. She couldn't stand up, she did a lot of baking, she loved walking, she couldn't do any of these things, and she handed me a piece of paper that said that they were going to operate on her hip. And I was kind of, crikey, this is quite severe. 4 treatments later, and she did kind of arshi a lot through the treatments, but using a mixture of cups, which is sliding cups, which really pull the skin up into the cups, gua sha, which is rubbing the hip and the area, electroacupuncture, which is putting current through the needles. 4 treatments. She's absolutely just a different woman. And I know that sounds like a really glib anecdote, but this woman was potentially going for an operation to have a hip replacement because of a musculoskeletal problem.
Sure.
Where the assessment in the hospital was just like, well, it's obviously your hip. It isn't, and she's doing everything that she wants again. So, but it doesn't matter. The Chinese theory will affect any Western diagnosis. So it applies to anything, even the most weird things. I mean, obviously I can't do anything with strabismus, which is, if when someone's eye moves into the centre of the eye, but
Sure.
because that is just a nerve thing. But most things can be treated with acupuncture. They just tend to take a bit longer. The way that we look at the body from a Western perspective is as an individual unit.
Yeah.
Why isn't there a fertility expert tied up with a gynecologist expert? When we're treating women, it's just. But I appreciate we can't be an expert in everything. But
Sure.
this is where acupuncture could really bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right about nutritional deficiencies. If you see somebody in the Western profession, a nutritionist, they will just simply hand you a piece of paper that says fats, proteins, and carbs.
Yeah,
and
sure.
here's the order in which you eat them.
Sure.
And there's actually no understanding of the individual that they're speaking to.
Sure.
It's this broad stuff. This is what you need to eat. And actually, it's just, well, they're not licensed or they can't give individual advice.
Sure.
But understanding where a nutritional deficiency lies, and all of the digestive problems can move away. And again, there's this trying to educate ourselves sometimes where we can cause more problems. So there's a lot of talk about probiotics and people ingesting them at high levels, but if the bad bacteria hasn't been gotten rid of, you're simply adding more food for the bad bacteria.
Sure.
And it's this, I think sometimes to take control of our health, we need to come off the internet.
Yes.
We
Sure.
need to go and see a specialist in whatever area it is and let them guide us. And I think people are with the wrong person if they're not sharing information.
Yeah.
If they're just, if they're not trying to get you well and trying to get you to take responsibility for your own health, then I would change practitioner. You need someone who's working with you as an integrated relationship.
Yeah, sure. It's funny sometimes seeing the response of clients when you actually say to them, okay, I'm going to suggest that you change this, you stop this, you add this, you begin doing this, and they go, well, what are we doing about my pain? And it's kind of like, here you go. This is what you're doing about your pain.
Absolutely.
It's understanding what that causality is in the first place, what our behaviours are. And I mean, even with things like, as you say, the gut bacteria, one of the things we see with epigenetics is that a lot of people will take like an off-the-shelf probiotic without understanding, well, what is the gut actually deficient with? And if we're putting in a broad-spectrum probiotic, it may not contain any of the bacteria the gut actually needs, and all you're doing then is crowding out an already deficient system with something it doesn't need and just adding to the problems. So as much as it's great for people to be taking responsibility for their health in that they're interested in it, they also need good quality guidance for it. And I think without seeing somebody like yourself or myself within that frame, it's very difficult to do that effectively.
It is. I think it's, after seeing a professional, then go for it. And I think one of the things about certainly Chinese medicine is that I've had clients of 13, 14 years who come back to me at the change of season, or when their issue starts again, they come back quicker than they would have done normally. I can't count the amount of times someone says, I just thought it would go away.
Yes.
It isn't.
Yes.
But the thing is it's taken probably months, maybe years, to get to that critical tipping point, which people think it's just happened.
Sure.
So when you say to somebody it's going to take probably 12, 13, 14 weeks of treatment to get this sorted, it's like, well, it's only just happened. Surely it's easily mendable.
Sure.
And you kind of can actually sometimes take it back on a timeline to that this event started probably in their teens,
Yeah.
you know, when they were eating food that was nutritionally bad for them, or were in difficult relationships, or were overstudying. You know, the event where that weakness started could have happened years and years ago.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I use the analogy a lot of a car with people that, you know, if you're driving it, then it will need servicing.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple as that. And depending on the quality of the roads you're on and how you drive it, it's going to depend on what kind of problems arise in the vehicle, how frequently, and so you're always going to need maintenance, and the body is no different. And like you, I get that question of, well, I don't understand, I've been behaving this way for 40 years and this problem's only just shown up. And it's like, well, yeah, you've probably had like 39 years of deterioration to the point where it's snapped and gone, I can't do that anymore, you've got to change this.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I kind of think of this as my body is this amazing Ferrari.
Yes.
You know, but when I was vegetarian and partying, you know, I didn't realise that my oil was just non-existent.
Sure.
You know, I was parking it in the garage and then, you know, going out and driving it at 90 mile an hour in third gear.
Yeah,
so
sure.
you know, it's kind of explaining to people so that they understand, you know, that we can do something. And sometimes some of the changes are really quick. And then to actually say to somebody, here's your framework, here's your constitution, this is your life in food and the way that you lead it exercise-wise or what have you. And that, you know, to be given your template for a good life, which will see you hopefully symptom-free.
Yeah.
You know, the Western profession just do not have this template for good health.
Yes.
They have a template for bad health,
Yes.
but we don't have a template for good health. And until we literally hit a wall, figuratively, literally and figuratively, but until we hit a wall with our health and start to look into it. But, you know, I'm just saying to people, as you do, don't wait to hit that wall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's got to be one of the best pieces of advice we can ever give to people is don't hit the wall. So, again, coming in from that point of view, why do you think people stop a treatment? You know, because I really appreciate that, you know, Rome isn't built in a day, and my body is a very complex system. To expect a one-shot answer to something is pretty unreasonable. But what do you think is difficult for people with an acupuncture treatment?
Generally, I think generally that people can come to myself and my colleagues as a last resort. So they're exhausted, they've tried everything, they're browbeaten, and they've had this issue for years. I do also think that the way of managing people's expectations is really important as well. And going back to the practitioner that just sticks needles in someone and doesn't talk about the person and then says, right, I'll see you next week, without offering any guidance or information, I think is really keeping someone in a state of ill health. I think if you're a decent practitioner, you will be able to see how somebody has been treating themselves over the years. And one of the things that I think is really important is measuring success. So, you know, I will ask somebody out of 10 how bad their pain is and how bad their sleep is or their digestion. It's amazing how 3 weeks later they'll forget that they said that their sleep was really bad.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks later I'll say, how are you sleeping? They'll say, really well.
Yeah.
But acupuncture hasn't done anything for my pain.
Yeah, sure.
And it's almost like we're going through a system of root and branch where, you know, the things that are very noticeable are changing, but that will change to the root cause ultimately, but it will just take time. But I think managing people's expectations is massive, and educating all the way, and that's always been my way of saying, right, we're in a partnership together. I'm going to get you well, trust me. You know, I'll ask you to do some things that you might not appreciate, but, you know, and we will measure success. And, you know, if we really haven't got success after X amount of treatments, then yeah, I'll put my hand up and say, but what I'll also do is suggest other people. So, you know, I might say, look, I'm not getting anywhere with this person, which is rare, but maybe I need, you know, your skills or somebody else's skills as well. So not just thinking I can do it all. It has to be an integrated solution, and sometimes, you know, that is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, again, possibly one of the places where not enough practitioners do themselves credit is recognizing how many parts of the issue that's taking place with that client are beyond the remit of the services they offer, and who could really support that. So we do, full integral aspects of that, which is really quite important. So, now I understand as well that you are going to be doing some workshops here in Shropshire, from around June time.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about those as well?
Well, I think it's this whole passion of mine to get people to take care of their health. And if I can educate you on how to do that, then I think it's definitely worthwhile coming along. So I'm going to be running a day of how to self-diagnose using some of the more easier concepts of Chinese medicine. So I will talk about the theory of Chinese medicine, but break it down into more easily digestible bits. A bit of looking at tongues, feeling of pulses, and just kind of realising what signs and symptoms can indicate ill health. So it'll be a really good, fun, interactive day of sticking tongues at each other and just talking about our own health, so we get a sense of what is going on. So it'll be a really supportive environment, but really some key things so that you can identify when you might be getting ill and what you can do about that.
Brilliant. We'll look forward to those, and details for those will be on the website for Centre for Integral Health shortly. And also, if people want to come and see you as private clients, tell me where they can do that and how they can do that, and where they can find more information about you.
Oh, thanks, Ben. Well, I work here at the Integral Centre. I'm pretty flexible in terms of times, and I also work at the Mayfair Centre in Church Stretton. I have a website, shropshireacupuncture.co.uk, where all my information is on there as well. So kind of look me up. I'll be delighted to see you.
Sure, and we'll make sure that there are links through to Amanda's profile page here at the Centre for Integral Health and her website in the description for this interview. So Amanda, thank you very much for coming along today and talking to me.
Brilliant. It's just so lovely to meet someone so enthusiastic about it, because it's just I feel so privileged, and I want to share that, and I think it's so important to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for listening along today. If you have any questions for myself or Amanda, get in contact with us via the links below, and I'll look forward to bringing you another installation of the Life Force Patterning Integral Health Radio in the near future. Take care. Have a great day.